Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast, part of the Almighty Baller Radio Network. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs, here as always with Blazers outsider Danny Marang.
Oh, is that what we're doing here? We're doing a podcast?
Yes, I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing. Were we doing were we signed up to do an interpretive dance instead?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know we'd branched out.
Yeah, you don't know about my background.
Oh, no, is there dance in the background?
All of the interpretive dance.
I remember when Noah Vonleh was traded to the Blazers, and I was trying to learn as much as I could about him. I found an excellent videotape of him Zumba dancing, and he was actually quite good. So I could see you having some sort of, hidden talents, some sort of hidden rhythm that we didn't know about. Why not?
Does he have the Zumba shirt, like, cut up at the bottom with the beads on it?
No, this was like in a high school. He'd gone to a high school to promote some sort of, physical fitness thing. And so he was doing it like a group Zumba class. So he didn't have like his official Zumba outfit on, I don't think.
Kind of disappointed now.
So we are just days away from the draft. Technically, teams could be doing stuff right now. The season is over. And here we wait.
Oh, so things are happening.
I guess we should probably go ahead and start with what do you think is going to happen with the draft? And I guess my question is, we talked over potential people that the Blazers may go after, but I want to start with, do you think the Blazers are even going to use that draft pick? To select a player.
Realistically, in my mind at least, the Blazers will not pick at 24th. If they use a first-round pick, they will either move up or move back. In some fashion, the only reason I would see them moving back is if there's a team behind them that wants somebody and they can move a little bit of salary along with that. And I think at the most you'll see on that end is like Harkless. And in that case, Portland would probably be bringing back a cheaper expiring veteran. And then taking on that pick and then moving Harkless's deal.
Now, aside from what you think they actually might do with that pick, why is it that you think that they won't be using exactly number 24, that they would move either up or down? Why do you think that they would do that?
Basically, from picks like 15 to 27, you can kind of pick however you want to go. And really, there's a lot of guys that can fall in that range. You could easily make the argument for one guy at 15 that, would fit also at 25 or 26 and value-wise would be about the same. It all depends on fit and really need. And there's all those guys that are in that range, none of them, at least right now, if you look at all the draft reviews, they all have particular skill sets. It's a bunch of Liam Neesons, so to speak. But these aren't your closers. These aren't the guys that you're really afraid of because they do have holes. And so it's about fit and need. So you could see a lot of these guys. I've seen somebody like Troy Brown, who a lot of Oregon fans I'm sure love, mocked anywhere from like 13 all the way to 24. Like that's a massive, massive gap that we don't usually see at this time of year. But I think it kind of shows that there's a lot of guys in there just kind of fit in that general area. So with that in mind, the value of that pick in that range isn't necessarily as high. And when you're talking about that, I think it's important for Portland to recognize that and realize that they're not – you're not looking to load up on young guys right now to fill the back end of your roster. You're looking to add guys that are impact players now. That's what Neil Olshey said. They're looking to add veteran impact players. Like, why would you want to add another young guy to the mix that isn't ready to go if, he's not going to really see the floor doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
If that pick is so underwhelming to Portland, what makes you think that it would be attractive to anyone else? Because there's a lot of teams in the draft right now that have numerous picks, and they seem like the ones who are most likely to want a lot of picks anyway. They're teams that are building, and they already have 4, 3, 6 draft picks. Like,
No, that's the thing.
It doesn't seem exactly like a hot commodity.
It's
so
not.
I feel like they're probably going to use it because I don't think it's really a big commodity out there right now.
Well, no, it's not, and that's why I think it'll be attached to something else in order to make it a bit more viable. And that's what sucks about where Portland's at right now, is that it's very, very difficult to tag down what they can get, the value of it. The idea that they could get something of commensurate value and need at 24 that they couldn't get on the open market or the trade market. That's why I think you'd see it combined with another asset to try to ease some of the financial burdens that are limiting how effective this team can be both in the trade market and in free agency.
Well, I want to know what you think about the new ESPN. They did the thing where they sent out 20 invites to guys to come to the green room. Do you think this is going to enhance our draft night experience as fans?
If by enhance you mean enhance the amount of time that we have to wait in between picks or the lead up to the draft or the post show, it's like, oh, for the love of God, guys, can we not do this? But I mean, that's ESPN's MO. Like, you want to take something and latch onto it.
Everything needs to be a giant event.
The NBA draft's already a giant event.
I mean, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the NBA is enough of an event, and I feel like they're just keep trying to tweak and tweak and tweak. And I feel like for a year, the NBA and all of its associated, media arms, everybody just needs to like chill out for a year and stop tweaking everything. I think they're tweaking everything to death, and they're just like tweaking the fun, and they're making things not be able to happen naturally because they're like, oh, we'll just tweak this and we'll just tweak. It's like the same thing with like the rules and with the CBA. They just tweak and tweak and tweak, and nobody just like lets things sit and just bubble for a while and percolate and see what's going to happen. I just feel like there's just way too much attention.
I don't mind them tweaking, but just we don't need to spend like the NBA draft as it sits right now. It's not the NFL draft where the first 3 rounds, typically means something.
5 days.
Yeah, but not only that, just like the first 3 rounds. I mean, because they do round 1, on the first day, and then I think it's rounds 2 and 3 on the second day. Like, it's not that kind of event. Like, once you really get to the late 20s, a lot of people are tuning out. Like, unless there's, the local. Unless
they still have a pick.
Yeah, unless the team that you're a fan of has the pick, or there's a college star that falls down a little bit. And I don't think the vast majority of people are going to care all that much where Grayson Allen goes. Like, I get he's a Duke guy and he's polarizing, but I just don't see a real big, market value. Not only that, and for my own selfish reasons, I'm doing the post-game show for NBC, and I don't want to be there until 11 o'clock at night. So
Dan, if you're going to become one of those media members who complains about having to cover the league, I'm going to hang up, because if I have to hear one more podcast, one more national writer complaining about how the summer league interferes with their summer plans, that's not going to fly anymore.
You know what,
everybody knows.
Everybody
knows the season doesn't end. Everybody knows the draft night is going to go late. You are the privilege of covering this, so no complaining.
You know what, I do, and I really wanted to just work that one in there just because it felt good. But in all seriousness, I do feel the plight of the national media guys, because they really don't get any time off. Like, they can't take vacations. Like, I've seen the schedules those guys have to work, and I'm just like, yeah. Where everybody else is hoping to have that, week or 2 off, or take a summer trip. Like, you when you're a national league or a national guy. I mean, take somebody like Ben, like Oliver. Like, that dude is always on. It's like, man,
he gets out to his national parks.
He does love his parks.
he gets out.
Shut up, Gulliver's Instagram account.
We're not gonna, be sad for people who are chasing their dream and writing
it is
stories
awesome.
And covering the league.
Yeah, no, it's mostly tongue in cheek, almost entirely. But yeah, no, it's so
we'll see what happens on Thursday. We'll see if it's the start of any big trades around the league. Last year that we had the Jimmy Butler trade happen. We had some exciting things happen on draft night. So if we can make it a few more days, then hopefully things will start picking up in the league.
I mean, the big one there is I think the Kawhi deal, there's two times it's going to happen. It's either leading up to the draft, or I think the couple days before free agency, because I think teams are going to want to know, where that domino is going to fall. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to get a crazy one, it's going to be Kawhi. I put out a Twitter poll to find out what people thought about when the Spurs are going to trade Kawhi. I said, is it going to happen before draft day, on draft day, after draft day, or not at all this season? And it's pretty close. 38% is the biggest percentage, and they think after draft day. Yeah, I think I'm in that line too, but I also think that it's probably a pretty good chance that if it's going to happen, it happens before the draft, because I think that's the kind of domino, like the one with Jimmy Butler that needs to fall beforehand. Otherwise, it kind of gets messy. Yeah.
I think we're going to need another metaphor, because there's so many dominoes this year that it's like, how many dominoes are there?
It's like those YouTube videos with, the contraptions those guys set up that, like the what do they call
the Rube Goldberg machine?
Yeah, the useless contraption that has like 37 moving parts, to flip his waffles. That's basically the NBA right now. Bunch of waffles.
Yeah. Well, with the draft looming and possible the beginning of some of the trades leading up to free agency, there's a couple things that I wanted to get your thoughts on that have to do with the Trailblazers. And one is has to do with Damian Lillard. Well, Damian and CJ, really. So, I mean, we've talked about this. You've talked about it for years before we even started doing the podcast together. You've been talking about it. There's a lot of talk about Dame and CJ being broken up. And really a lot of stuff has really been amping up around CJ moving or being traded. And it's like all of a sudden, like this narrative is taken over like it's a done deal. So how serious do you think it is? Are there people out there left who don't think that this duo is going to be broken up, or is that narrative just completely taken over and it's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's people in Portland who don't think it's going to happen, and they don't want it to happen because they love CJ and Dame together, and I get that. But from a media perspective and an observer's perspective, the belief that, or the idea that they can make it work somehow and be effective with the position that they're in financially and the limitations they have within the roster, and to continue to develop this team with those two guys is pretty much non-existent at this point. I mean, we alluded to it just a second ago with Sean Highkin's piece. Like, I've talked to Sean about this a bunch of times. Sean's a Portland native guy. Like, he understands Portland. He knows the dynamics of the franchise, the fan base, and even he's like, listen, I mean, for them to move on, to be a competitor going forward, it's time.
Well, so hold on a minute. Before I want to go, I will talk about what Sean Highkin has suggested in a second here. But are you saying it is absolutely out of the question? The story is done. The book is closed that the Blazers can go after a third star to complement Damian and CJ?
Yeah, I think that happened 2+ years ago, or 2 years ago. I think 2016 put that whole idea behind lock and key. And that
I don't know.
Unless there's a player out there who staunchly wants to play alongside Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum in Portland and basically demands and forces it to happen, or is willing to take a massive, massive discount, I don't see that reality. And I know some people are like, well, Zach Collins could turn into that guy. I mean, even if Zach Collins turned into that guy, let's say Zach turns into a superstar, does anybody think it's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years?
But do they need it to happen in the next 2 or 3 years? Because when's the next time that the Golden State Warriors aren't gonna win a championship?
Well, if you're talking about playing them alongside Damian CJ does, because they'll be 30.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know about you, but the difference for me from 26, 27 to 30 was pretty substantial physically. And I can only imagine what it is for these guys, for their wear and tear on their body. Especially a guy like Damian Lillard, who I don't think gets a lot of credit for how physical he is. There's a reason why he misses a few games every year. Like, he's got a foot issue that I don't think is probably going to ever go away until, he finishes his career. Expecting that to get any better over the next few years, expecting the wear and tear on a guy who, throws his body into the paint regularly to not exacerbate some things physically over the next few years, is huge. And I mean, this is a discussion or the argument, however you want to phrase it, you and I have had now for a while. And that's the idea. If you're not building towards something, what's the point? In the grand scheme of competition, if they're not building towards something, if they've plateaued, why do you stay there? Like, what is, like, I know this is getting a little bit meta, but like, what is the point of staying there at that level if you're not gaining anything, whether it's through player growth, asset retention, draft picks? I mean, there's a million things.
So I see what you're saying about how they need to be building to something. But what I'm getting at is I just can't believe that the book is closed and nobody can pull a rabbit out of a hat. I mean, if you look at last year, Paul George's trade to Oklahoma City. Did anyone see that coming? Did anyone see him going to Oklahoma City? What would be different between, from Paul George going to play with Russell Westbrook versus Paul George going to play with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum? I know it didn't happen, but I just don't understand why you think the lid is slammed closed on this, and there's no way that somebody can't come up with something creative because it hasn't happened. Every single year they come up with something and we all go, "Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened."
Yeah, you're right. Every team basically in the Western Conference but Portland has been able to do this. I mean, you look at even a Denver is able to swing a deal for a Paul Millsap, who's a hell of a player. The Rockets being in a position to not only move for Harden, years ago, to now be in a position to move for Chris Paul. You go up and down the list of franchises, specifically in the Western Conference, over the last 4 or 5 years, who have made a big-time move in acquiring a all-star, near all-star, or a guy who blossomed into an all-star. It's pretty substantial. Like, the idea that, Paul George wouldn't come to Portland, well, Portland had the opportunity to make that happen. They had that chance, and they couldn't swing it.
But so did other teams.
Yeah, but those other teams have also done things. Like, if you look up and down the list, I admire your optimism, Tara, but it's just not a reality. It's just it doesn't happen here right now because of the way things are with the way the roster is constructed. It is just loaded at the very top with Dame and CJ, and then the gap between those guys and everybody else is so substantial that their ability to make moves that would, quote unquote, move the needle, it isn't there. And I truly wish it was. Like, I would love for the Blazers to be able to pair Dame and CJ with, let's say they had the money a year ago, and Gordon Hayward had a great relationship with Dame and CJ. And instead of going to Boston, he went to Portland. Like, that would have been a hell of a move. But because of the things that Portland did, and they lined everything up to have money in 2016 when a bunch of other teams did, and the cap exploded without cap smoothing, everything that went along with that, it's going to come back to bite them in the butt for the next probably 2 or 3 years, 2020 at the earliest, before, I think, unless drastic changes take place, Portland has another opportunity to make this happen, unless something so far out of left field that comes out there that it's a bummer. They're just stagnated.
Okay, so I don't want to relitigate 2016 again because we've been there a million times. Like, no. But the other thing I worry about is then continually throwing good money after bad because, people want something to happen. I mean, I don't want them to do stuff when you're lost in the forest, they tell you to hug a tree, right? Like, don't leave. We will come fight. Like,
no, I'm right there with you.
Don't go wandering into the woods and get more lost. And I worry about them doing things just for the sake of doing things and then pushing it out even farther.
See, I'm not worried about that so much.
Why are you not worried about that?
Portland,
help me rest easier.
Okay, as far as free agency is concerned, that bothers me because Portland's history of free agency is just. But as far as the idea of making a move just to make a move, the only one that I can think of in recent memory is Evan Turner. Because everybody I've talked to, everything I've ever heard was like one of the biggest panic buys in recent memory. Mm-hmm. He was option, F, option I, whatever. Like, all you have to do is just go down the list of guys that Portland was linked to before they got to Evan Turner. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, though, I don't believe Portland has. Well, they haven't in the past had the propensity to make rash decisions like that. They've kind of stuck by their guns, and they haven't really deviated from those. And
which is exactly what they've been saying all along. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've been saying I get that there's the message has been we're building around Dame and CJ, but I always read that, after the summer of 2016, I always read that as we're building around Dame and CJ because that's what we've got and we need to do internal development because that is where we are until we get out of this and we're not going to rush out of it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. The other part of it, at least for me, is that Portland really it's tough to kind of put my finger on exactly what it is. I think the fan base, the franchise, the relationship it has with the community, they can't afford to just do those things because the amount of goodwill that they have. I don't think they ever want to see it look like what it did during the Jailblazer era. So they can't make those rash decisions. They can't go crazy with it. But I don't think trading C.J. McCollum for the proper package, for the proper deal, or anything along those lines is anything remotely rash or brazen by any means. Mm-hmm. I think that's adjusting to the market or to the structure of the team and the current place that they're at in the NBA and making the necessary course adjustments. I mean, that's just, I mean, I've seen these comments.
CJ seems like the reasonable next step if they're going to have to do something. Well, let's get into some of the suggestions that have come out lately, especially from Sean Highkin, because like you said, he's a Portland guy, so he does know the landscape pretty well, better than some of the other national writers who are like putting stuff out there. Like, what?
What was that again?
Just. I don't even if I'm looking at them going, what? Then they're questionable. But okay, so here's a few that came from this Bleacher Report article by Mr. Highkin. I put them all in the trade machine so I can say that they all turned green. The first one is Cavs for trading CJ to the Cavs for the 8th pick and Kevin Love. We kind of talked about this one last week. Mm-hmm. You're not a fan of having Kevin Love in the mix. I am a fan of his outlet passes. But this one is slightly different because it includes the 8th pick.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting the 8th pick with Kevin Love, I think that changes things quite substantially.
Okay.
You're with the 8th pick. You're still in that range. You're on the back end of the range, but I think there's 8 or 9 guys that are, at least from initial glance. Well, not initial glance. I mean the research that I've done and the guys that I've talked to. There's 8 or 9 guys that people truly believe have the ability and the talent to really make things happen pretty quickly. I mean, there's even a chance that a guy like, and I'm not a huge fan of him, but maybe Portland is, maybe they have some insight on it. A guy like Michael Porter Jr. falls. I like I said, I'm not a fan, but I think if you're looking at, and if you've listened to the podcast for, I don't know, how long am I doing this now? 2 years? The one thing that I've screamed that Portland needs for the last few years is a versatile wing guy that can get his own shot. If Michael Porter Jr. is healthy, then he's got that ability. Kevin Love still has a couple years left in him.
Right. So let me just correct what I read. I said eighth pick and Kevin Love. It's actually eighth pick or Kevin Love. So with CJ for just the eighth pick,
that's not enough.
I guess they would have to throw in some people, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's just salary wise. I mean, I guess you're assuming LeBron's gone, so then I don't think salary wise you have to worry. But yeah, the eighth pick and Love, I thought that was a bit of an overbuy or an oversell there. I was like, wow, I thought.
But remember, they're never even. They're never even.
Hell,
we never look at a trade and go, oh yeah, that seems like it's really equal.
Yeah, no, like I think if Portland's going to get, and this is kind of the roundabout way of like top 10 draft picks, CJ should and could get you that. I think that's a real thing. But I think they need to find some player in there that they also get something out of with it. But I think if Portland's going to do that, I think more likely it would be in like a 3-team trade. Because if LeBron's leaving Cleveland, I don't think they're going to want to give up that 8th pick for an in-prime player. I think they're going to want to go younger, in which case then it would make a little bit more sense. But here's the thing about all the trade CJ scenarios. I think the Blazers are a year, maybe 2 years late on this. Guys, I think the value that you would have gotten from CJ, because I mean, we talked about this last week on the podcast, like where has CJ's value gone? And like, I mean, a year ago, what would you have expected to get from trading CJ versus what you expect to get now? And I don't think CJ's really like fallen off at all. I just think that there's a drastic difference in what the perception is of where he's at right now. And that's much different.
Difference is what do people need? And, people don't need, 6'4" shooting guards. They all want wings.
It's the year of the wing.
A couple years ago, they were looking for guards.
Yeah, I mean.
And now everyone's looking for wings.
The rise of Steph Curry, that made people think, everybody needs a Steph Curry on their team. But then they're like, well, how do you counter, what a lot of teams are trying to do with these dynamic point guards? Because I think this is the point guard generation. Well, you get bigger versions of them. And what better way to do that than to, get 6'8", 6'9" guys that can do a lot of the same things. Then there you go.
Okay, there's two more that Heiken proposed. One was trading with Toronto for DeMar DeRozan. What do you think of that one? I mean, is that just like moving in the deck chairs, and at least we get like an injection of, a new personality and,
you
somebody
get some
new to
size.
Talk about? Or do you think basketball reasons it's a better fit?
I think it's better in the sense that you get some size, you get some versatility with scoring, you get a presence. We get a lot more dunks, and boy, would we get some dunks. Fast break opportunities, transition opportunities. There's a lot of things here that I really like with that idea. The things that I don't like are, does that really help Portland? 'Cause I don't think I don't think DeMar's that much better than CJ. That
they both have 4 years left on their contract. And DeMar actually makes more.
Exactly, and that doesn't necessarily help Portland. And then if you're Toronto, why do you do that? Like, what's the reasoning behind that? Is it to just go and
they might want to go slightly younger. I mean, CJ's 3 years younger, 3 or 4 years younger.
Yeah, which I mean, again, I get it.
And they have a lot of young talent, so I could see why they might like that.
Yeah, but I mean, from Portland's perspective, why would you want to get older and more expensive if you're not getting that much better? Like, I understand making that move for Kawhi Leonard, like that makes sense. But for somebody who's older, more expensive, and not substantially better. And now I think CJ and DeMar are probably on par with about the same line as far as production and value. We had this discussion about, is CJ a top 5 player last week, and I think DeMar is right there with CJ. Yeah, I can understand the folks that think CJ is more valuable, and I can understand the guys that think that DeMar is more valuable. It just depends on what you want.
I mean, it seems like a move like that would just be to like shake things up, and just to make sure that things haven't gotten stale. Because both teams, I mean, last year they added some young talent, but otherwise, both teams, basically Toronto and Portland, stayed really similar. And Toronto very famously tried the culture shift with the same staff, and didn't work out great for Casey.
Now, here's the great thing about that is like, hey, we're gonna have a culture shift. We're changing things around, and then they fire their coach only to bring back the assistant coach that he had.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm so confused.
One more before we start talking about Kawhi is Clippers trading with the Clippers and DeAndre Jordan for CJ McCollum. What's your gut reaction to that one?
Not enough. Not even close.
But they're never the same.
No, they're
just never even. You think that they're going to be even. You think that both teams are going to be like, oh yeah, that's great.
No, but it's not like there has to be some rhyme or reasoning to it. There's no rhyme or reasoning to adding DeAndre Jordan for CJ. Well, McCollum.
DeAndre Jordan only has 2 years left on his contract to CJ's 4.
Okay, that's great, but DeAndre Jordan's much older. His value is gonna probably fall as his athleticism falls. There's no rhyme or reason to really do that because here's the other part of it. You've got Zach Collins. You've got possibly Yusuf Nurkic. Like you're putting yourself financially in a spot that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like if you're Portland, you're at least in my mind.
You're not changing your financial situation at all because they make the same amount of money.
No, I'm talking about tied up in the front court.
Okay.
But here's the thing. If you're Portland, there's one of two ways that this needs to go. If you're trading CJ McCollum, you're getting either younger by picking up assets the way Indiana did it with Oladipo and Sabonis, or a top-tier draft pick, and I think it needs to be top 8, bare minimum. Or you're getting an M-prime guy who you're just trying to change things around with, with one team or another. I think that's what needs to happen there. Beyond that, I don't see the sense in making a move. It doesn't. Otherwise, then you're just shifting deck chairs, and then that's more about what we were talking about earlier, and making a move just to make a move, and that's just weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if they thought that they had an actual path to a big free agent who's going to be coming up in a few years, that would be a whole ton of money coming off the books all at once, because it would be at the same time as Turner and Harkless and Myers Leonard. They would all be on the same.
Turner, everybody's up in 2020 as far as the deals that were signed in 2016.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the juicy one. The juicy gossip of the week is that the Vampire Spurs, one of their vampires, wants out. Kawhi Leonard. It's a very strange story. It was reported by Chris Haynes and then also Adrian Wojnarowski that Kawhi Leonard wants out of San Antonio. As of today, Sunday, it sounds like the Spurs had not been officially sat down and talked with about this. So possibly the Spurs may be moving on from Kawhi. I'm the Spurs. I'm taking calls.
Yeah. Well, first things first.
What would you say if you were calling up the Spurs, or do you think the Spurs will be the ones making the phone calls?
Oh, they've got plenty of people calling. that's for sure. But first things first. Here, shout out to Chris Haynes. Was here in Portland for a little while, and he's just completely blown up over the last couple of years. So props to him for breaking this before Woj. Like that's huge news. Mm-hmm. The other part to this is that what's strange is if anybody didn't read the article on ESPN, I want to say probably like 2 or 3 months ago, about the entire relationship between Kawhi's uncle and how it's almost
taken over management.
Yeah, it's almost like God, what was that NBA or the 90s basketball movie where he had the guy basically trying to steal from him. God, my brain is failing me. But anyways, it's almost out of a bad 90s
Air Bud?
movies. Yeah, that's it, Air Bud. I know that's your go-to basketball movie. Oh, God.
And semi-pro.
There you go. I can.
You guys should have included. I'm so sad that I've never been involved in a favorite basketball movie discussion with you, Dan. Because I've got some good takes on basketball movies.
I'm still gonna go with the Above the Rim. I mean, it's just too good. I can't not have Above the Rim in there. But it's such a strong contrast with what we know of Kawhi Leonard. The quiet, unassuming,
what do we really know
non-confrontational.
Really? I don't think it's really out of character. We don't know anything about him because he's never been open with who he is. So I don't really think that this is particularly out of character.
Well, considering how his uncle has been reported to operate, it's very different from what we've seen from Kawhi Leonard. And I think that says quite a bit as far as where they're sitting at right now. And man, shout out to the Spurs for a 20-plus year reign. That's it. I think we're going to have the same kind of discussion, argument, whatever it is, when Belichick and Brady eventually fall apart.
We're never talking about them on this podcast. Move on.
I'm just saying, like, the way that they have done things, and the dynasty and how they've gone about it.
Wait, can we do a sidebar on dynasties? Okay, here's the thing. I was having this discussion with my husband earlier today. Is Golden State really a dynasty?
Yes.
Because in my mind, a dynasty is a sustained excellence where they turn it over and they stay good because they've groomed them. They've brought up the next generation. I don't think you're a dynasty until you've gone through 2 iterations.
Well, I think that it has been 2 iterations. It just happened so fast because it was Kevin Durant.
That's not 2 iterations. That's just like marrying somebody rich.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's this version of the Warriors is different than the Splash Brothers Warriors. It just is. It's disgusting and awful, and I hate it. But it's a different iteration of. Yeah,
but they didn't bring somebody along and bring them into and like.
Sure, they did. They recruited the top mercenary that they could find. They don't need to develop them. I mean, does it matter where it comes from?
But you know what I mean. I mean, the Spurs have like a clear line, but David Robinson to Tim Duncan to Kawhi Leonard. It was like the torch was passed. There was consistency. All the players were developed around them in a lineage. And
yeah, but they also added the Marcus Aldridge, and I know that didn't turn into something, but they continually added guys to this mix. Yeah. I mean, that's just, I think that's the reality of it. It's just that for the Warriors, it just happened so fast. But yeah, anytime you win this many titles in this short a period, and it's basically a my allergies are acting up. It's a foregone conclusion that a team is going to win the title before the season starts, and then it just basically ends up being that exact story. I think
it's a different word than dynasty, and I'm going to spend the next week mulling that over. But anyway, about the Spurs.
But as far as the Spurs go, this is surprising at bare minimum.
It's so much.
Yeah, it's a little wild to say the least. I didn't see it coming. I thought there were some smoke and mirrors, and I figured they would find a way to work this whole thing out. That they haven't is pretty wild to me. But what ends up happening out of this, in my second best scenario, is Kawhi Leonard goes to any team other than the Lakers. I do not want to deal with Warriors exceptionalism and Lakers exceptionalism at the same time. Just no.
Well,
no, I want
what's
no
your
part
pitch
of it.
To bring him to Portland?
Well, there's no pitch. It's a trade. I mean, and it has to include.
I mean, what's your pitch to the San Antonio Spurs to get him traded to Portland?
It begins with McCollum. That's the starting point. You even get them to pick up the phone. And then with that, you're probably looking at some combination of the first round pick, Collins, Harkless, or Aminu. And I think that's probably where it comes together. If that's a package that interests them. I think if they're moving on from Kawhi, McCollum's probably a steady replacement. Aminu makes a ton of sense. He's basically a White Walker already. He just kind of shows up and yes, sir, is it all the time. Very steady. Dope. Done a ton of on or off court personality. Very, very much Spursian. I think Harkless is kind of in the same mode. So you could just kind of pile up those guys. they fit in great in San Antonio.
So I think I do not see a. I don't think the Blazers. And now you're gonna like hang up on me, but I don't think the Blazers need to offer CJ.
Yes, they do.
I mean,
absolutely, they do.
I don't think they. I mean,
there's too many better packages out there.
It's like we never go. Oh yeah, that seems fair. I mean, I think it's going to be whatever the trade ends up being. It's going to be people going, "Oh my God, I can't believe that they gave up Kawhi Leonard for that."
This is the Spurs. This is R.C. Buford. This isn't Rob Heinegan. This isn't.
So this is a different
Billy
situation
King.
than Paul George in OKC.
Yeah,
or Indiana.
Yeah, this is there's just the leverage play is there, so to speak, for Kawhi forcing a deal. But when was the last time the Spurs made a trade that they quote unquote lost with R.C. Buford at the helm? It doesn't happen. They're not going to allow that to happen. They know how to work the system. They know how to manipulate it. They know how to get out in front. And I think that was part of why we saw the Spurs, I don't want to say slandering, but kind of throwing it out there that it was Kawhi's fault as far as like the medical stuff. It was Kawhi's fault. It was Kawhi's camp's fault. The Spurs are fine. The Spurs are great. We're, Spurs exceptionalism, blah, 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 blah. They kind of saw this coming. Like, if you go back and read all the things with the hindsight that they figured that Kawhi may be wanting to get out, it's like they got out in front of it. And by doing so, they look pretty good as far as, in the starting blocks.
Mm-hmm. So you definitely don't dangle and offer Damian Lillard, do you?
No. I mean,
okay,
from a pure basketball standpoint, yes. But from a realistic standpoint, no. And this is something you and I were talking about before the podcast. Is like this idea that Damian Lillard could be on the trade market. Like the people, I know there's people in Portland that aren't huge fans of Dame, or they like CJ more than Damian Lillard because of this, that, or the other. It's just not realistic to move Damian Lillard. The way that I frame this is, let's go back a few years, like before, Brandon had knee issues, and he was at the top of his game and the fan favorite and the face of the franchise. Is there a world that existed where you could ever imagine Brandon Roy being on the trade market?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No.
No.
And it's much the same case with Damian Lillard. You can't even entertain that idea in Portland.
Well, and if Damian Lillard gets changed, who's the leader of your team? Or if he gets traded, who's the leader of the team?
If you were to believe some of the reports that are coming out, Kawhi doesn't want to be that guy.
Right. So that's why I think I would, obviously he would be so great alongside Dame and CJ.
Oh yeah.
God, that would be so great.
I know you said that CJ doesn't get traded. So what's your idea for a package that gets Kawhi Leonard to Portland without Dame or CJ?
Okay, well, you're gonna laugh me off the face of the planet, and everybody will stop listening to the podcast because I'm out of my mind. But looking historically at how often we've all sat around scratching our heads in incredulity about how lopsided things seem to be, I say with all the love in my heart that they package Harkless and Aminu for Kawhi, and maybe throw in some picks as well.
Yeah, no. The Celtics, the Sixers, and the Lakers have so many more assets to work with that the Spurs would demand. That's the thing. It's not like there's a shortage. There's not like a limitation.
But you know what's funny? If you added up Harkless's and Aminu's PER, they still don't even meet Kawhi's.
Yeah, Kawhi's was like 25, but yeah, it's dumb. I mean, people forget about two things, I think, or two players right now in the NBA because of injuries or weirdness in Kawhi's case. That's Kawhi Leonard and Gordon Hayward, and how good those two guys are, and how much better the NBA is going to be next year with both of them back and healthy. That's all.
Yeah.
Let's just had those two things to say, because
I know. And I know mine is silly, and I know I always forget that the East exists, and also I found one more interesting thing about all the Kawhi rumors, and it's the betting lines for the different teams that Kawhi will end up on. Have you seen these yet?
Yeah, no, I've seen the odds for a couple different prop bets. I know they've adjusted. I know the Lakers were still the favorite, but they weren't heavily favored over the flat line, 0 that everybody wants to talk about. The line going one way or the other. At Bovda, the Lakers are the favorite, and they're at minus 140, with the two dark horse candidates being the Cavs and the Clippers at plus 1,000, which is a pretty big swing.
I mean, it seems pretty obvious that the Lakers are a much more popular franchise than the Clippers, but he did just say he wanted to go to Los Angeles, and knowing Kawhi and how he's not necessarily a big limelight seeker, hence he, hid out in San Antonio for all those years. Do you think it's really that far apart between the Lakers and the Clippers?
Probably. I mean, being a California guy.
Jerry West is with the Clippers now, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Jerry still has the magic touch of the pull. And trust me, I'd be thrilled if they stuck it to the Lakers by
wouldn't that be great if he went to the Clippers?
But he
wasn't going to come to Portland, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not going to come to Portland, I'd rather have him go somewhere else. Other than I don't want to see him go to Boston. I don't want to see him go to the Lakers either. Those are the two franchises I just don't want to see him go to. I mean, if he went to Philly, God, that'd be just nuts. Having a front court that features Kawhi Leonard, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. Yikes.
Do you think that San Antonio is most likely to seek out a spot in the Eastern Conference for him, or how much do you think that weighs in on they might do?
I think the Spurs are smart. I don't think you want Kawhi in conference. I don't think you want to play him 4 times a year. I don't think you want to match up with him in the playoffs, and I don't think you want to send him to the Lakers. The reality of it is, they're still human beings. There's still going to be probably some misgivings there. And to have them say, you know what, we really don't want to send you to a rival franchise that, is in our conference. Not only that, you get a chance to stick it to the Lakers. How often do you get a chance to do that? And I personally would enjoy it because I'd like to watch Lakers fans get their hopes up and then have them dashed and crushed in a incredibly bright spotlight. Because we have that happen regularly in Portland. It's just a much smaller spotlight.
Tell us how you really feel. Well, we did hear that the Celtics had reached out at the trade deadline for
made one
Kawhi,
phone call, basically. They're like, okay, cool.
Looks like they've
yeah, and they have the assets. If you're looking at a team that has young, tangible, contract controlled assets, players that can develop and basically kickstart another rebuild for the Spurs, Boston is by far the best opportunity. Don't listen to these Laker fans who want to say that Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma are as valuable as Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, because they're not.
Yeah, I like Brandon Ingram. I will admit it. I don't know why, but I just.
You were a conundrum wrapped in a riddle, surrounded by.
I know.
enigma.
I like to try to be. That's like the biggest compliment that you've given me, Dan. That I've confused you on that.
Makes no sense. Okay.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see also when this happens, if it happens before or after the draft day, or even if the Spurs do it at all, because maybe, that this meeting hasn't happened, and Popovich will meet with Kawhi and he'll give him a compelling enough reason to believe that he is going to stay and he's going to play. So, hopefully he's not going to do the thing that reportedly Kyrie did, where he said that he was going to threaten to not even play anymore. Well, the Spurs have been without a year of Kawhi already. So we'll see where that all goes. It'll be very interesting. I just, I don't want to say that I love to see a crack in the, perfection of the San Antonio Spurs, but boy, do I love seeing a crack in the San Antonio Spurs.
It's like I see. I'm.
They've taken what I love for so many years. I just want one little, speed bump for them. I would just like them to have a little bit harder time.
Yeah, I get it. The Spurs just don't bother me for some reason. Like I just. When I look at them, I think they do it. They did it the right way. They've had a hell of a
blah blah blah.
Had a hell of a franchise. Their style, their system, their culture, everything about what they've done is something that I genuinely like, and it all feels earned. Whereas,
you know what? I don't.
With the Lakers,
it
never feels earned
much either. So you're probably a vampire too. So you can probably relate to them.
This is very, very, very much true. I mean, I have a job where I'm on TV at night. I mean, you put the pieces together.
A little humble brag in there. Gotta get it in there, Dan. Hey, well, let's wrap it up with one of my new favorite topics. Blazer5 Gaming continue
winning again
with their hot play. Did you catch any of their matches this weekend? They had two.
Yeah, I stayed right there with them. I want to see them do well.
Friday,
and be successful.
I can't remember who they played on Friday. I have to admit, was that Orlando?
Yes.
Okay, so they played Orlando on Friday, just took them apart, and then on Saturday was the big matchup. This was against the 76ers, which is the only team that they have lost to all year, and the Blazer5 Gaming did it. They beat them, and now they've beaten every team in the league. They've only lost one game the entire season.
Yeah, that was a championship game
storyline, and I really suggest folks start following it, because they are just heads and tail, or head and shoulders above everybody
I knew
else.
where you're going with that, but no, I'm right there with you. I love what they've done. For those that still haven't gotten involved or are leery of it or don't understand it, just check it out, because it's here to stay. I mean, we talked about this when we first kind of started talking about Blazer5 Gaming. There's so much money and for lack of a better word, power behind the league. There's so many movers and shakers there that it's gonna have a real chance, or every chance possible to be successful. So, I mean, getting in early and understanding it and kind of being a part of it, I think could be something that's really cool.
Yeah. Also, outlet passes and dunks regularly.
Yeah, no, it's the complete. They play the complete opposite style of the Blazers. They have a point guard and two absolutely dominant big men, and they just beat teams to death inside. So it's fun. I wish those guys well. One Wild Walnut and Mama I'm That Man and Lavish Phenom and all those guys.
Lavish had a great game. He had a career high.
Yep, and he's the guy who was the alternate. So,
right, yeah, he hadn't played in a lot of the previous matches.
Yes, so each team, for those that don't know, they've got 6 guys, not just the 5. So they have an alternate that comes in, and he got his opportunity. I think his first time he'd come in was 2 weeks ago, and he's been really, really solid. since he's come in, and it's really fun. If you're not into the whole gaming aspect of it, it's really cool to watch these live when they do the cuts to the actual players, these guys. Mm-hmm. The Blazer5 Gaming talks more trash than any team in the league.
Yeah, that one Wild Walnut, he might want to. I understand he's on the top of the world right now, but he says some stuff and he stands up and he gets in guys' face. So for people who haven't seen it before, the way it works is they all show up to one location and they're sitting around this giant big table, 5 on one side and 5 on the other, and then they each have their own
personal monitor
that they're watching. But then, like, the crowd has the big monitor, way up so they can watch the whole thing as well. But then they, like, jump up and they yell at each other, especially one Wild Walnut. He seems to have a lot to say.
Mama, I'm that man does, too.
And they trash talk each other. But it also seems like it's in pretty good spirits. But I don't know. I haven't ever been in the actual room.
They chirp each other pretty good. And, I mean, when you're playing the way those guys are playing right now, and they're beating up on everybody and they're backing it up, I'm all about it. I am absolutely 100% here for it. And it's I have to admit, I get a little bit of a smirk on my face and every time that they start going at it, because it reminds me of the days when I was younger and used to get in and chirp at everybody else as I was playing. So it's pretty cool.
I just keep watching it and thinking, is this how it feels to be a Golden State Warriors fan?
This is as close as we're going to get. Oh, no.
Well, our Blazers are also they're going to turn the corner any day now. I got to get my little bit of optimism out there. And maybe it starts right now. Maybe it starts a couple summers from now, but maybe it starts this summer is when the tide starts to turn.
I will snuff that optimism out. I think we should
go ahead and probably wrap it up for the evening. There's probably going to be a whole bunch more news over the next several days. Dan, let's see. I'm trying to think of what I have to share. I recently had a Women's Hoops and Talks episode come up with, which we did talk to a Laker fan because I wanted to know what they're thinking right now, because of course they think that like LeBron,
the world is their oyster.
Everybody else is going to just, be clamoring to come to the Lakers. So it was fun to talk to a Laker fan and find out what they were thinking. So that's the latest episode of Women's Hoops and Talks. And then I also, for the ladies who are listening, just scheduled a summer league watch party. We're going to get together at McMillan's like we do during the season. But we're going to get together on the Saturday, July 7th, to watch one of the Blazers Summer League games. So that should be fun because we probably won't be watching the game as closely as we watch most of the games. And so we'll have time to get caught up on all the offseason changes. And we'll have follow me on Twitter at TCBBiggs, and you can find information about how to attend that.
All right, and as far as draft coverage and stuff goes, obviously Blazers Edge will have you covered on draft night. If you guys are looking for any immediate wrap-up afterwards, I will be on NBC Sports Northwest immediately following the Trailblazers coverage for draft night. And we're recording this Sunday night, but Monday afternoon in the 4 o'clock hour, I will be on the Rip City Drive with Travis and Chad to kind of preview the draft stuff and kind of go a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of stuff as far as the draft is concerned, and a little bit probably about Kawhi Leonard. And then, it's a down day or two until the draft. And we'll have all the coverage between Blazers Edge and NBC Sports Northwest, and Blazers Outsiders will kind of fill in the gap in between.
Yeah, will you guys be eating as many marshmallows as you can anytime soon? Because for people who missed that was quite entertaining on the bridge. So you guys are doing the hard-hitting stuff.
Yeah, we had our mock draft
How
combine.
Many marshmallows can you put in your mouth?
Shane got to 24, which is a feat I did not think possible. I got to 13, and Shane was just kicking my butt there. But in fairness, there was also a beer chug where I absolutely destroyed him. It was a fair trade. But yeah, when Shane got to 20-something, I literally ran off the stage laughing because he just kept stuffing them in. And it was one of those stupid human tricks that was just mind-boggling. But yeah, Shane and I both got paid to stuff marshmallows in our face and drink beer on TV. So consider that a life
goal. For all of us, when I say I can't wait for basketball to start up again.
Neither can we. Although, if we're going to have off nights like that, I think we'll survive.
All right, well, take us out of here, Dan.
All right, folks, you can find me on Twitter at D Marang. As always, I don't know, Blazers Outsiders and Tuesdays and Thursday nights. Stay tuned. We've got some cool stuff coming out there. Other than the draft coverage, we had some pretty big announcements in the pipe that once we get confirmation on the green light, we'll be able to announce those things as we head into the next Blazers season. Other than that, Tara, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you.
They can find me at TCBBiggs on Twitter, or you can find the Women's Hoops and Talks Facebook group, and we have all kinds of fun discussions, and only prerequisite is that you have to love Ed Davis.
I mean, that's a pretty easy prerequisite.
I know.
And if you don't, you shouldn't be there anyways. All right, so for Tara Bowen-Biggs, I'm Danny Marang. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Megaphone FM. It's part of the Almighty Baller Podcast and Radio Network. Download, link, subscribe, unsubscribe. Work the system as always, and we'll catch you guys after the draft. Take care.